Hey, it's Rob. Welcome to Everyday Investor, the hottest investment show in the world. That's right, I said it. I don't care who knows it. We all want more time to spend with family and friends. We want time to engage in a purpose greater than ourselves, to have some sort of meaning in life. The challenge is we spend most of our time working to make money in order to live. Let me say that again. We spend our precious time working to make money in order to live. Imagine a life where money could make you money to live in order that we could work less and have more time for the things that matter most. Well, you can. Learn how from everyday people who are making this a reality. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Coming up, Rachel Oliver teaches us how our money can make us money investing in rent-to-own for cash flow.
And the return on investment per year can be anywhere from 25% to about 29%. That's kind of the going rate.
Everyday Investor is brought to you by ProFunds Mortgages, Fixed Returns, Real Security, Sam McDaddy Real Estate, full service brokerage for all your buying, selling, and investing needs.
Hey, welcome back to Everyday Investor. So excited about this show. We're talking about how to make money investing in rent-to-own for cash flow. We're talking to my good friend, Rachel Oliver. Remember, when anyone offers you any type of investment opportunity, you always want to ask 4 questions to start. Number 1, what is the ROI, the return on investment? Number 2, when do I get that along with the money that I put in? 3, what is the minimum cash amount needed? And 4, what is the risk, the worst case scenario? Rachel, I'm delighted to have you on the show.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for believing in the show so much that you're one of our key sponsors.
It's a pleasure.
I feel very grateful that you would do that. We've known each other for a few years. I think we met at a seminar many years back, but what's new with you? What's happening?
Well, the same old, same old. I'm focused on trailblazing the rent-to-own strategy and making a positive difference in the lives of home buyers who are struggling to get into home ownership, and ultimately helping a lot of investors create cash flow.
Yeah, and why I love having you on the show is because I know that this is just a tool for you. You have a wonderful husband, 2 wonderful daughters, and you enjoy life, and you be able to give back. And so, talk a little bit about that concept of this strategy, why you like it, and what it can do for you and for your investors.
Well, about 10 years ago, I realized that I wanted to create some form of cash flow without having the overhead of tenants and toilets. I just don't do too well with those because they're time consuming. And although there's a place for tenants and toilets in a real estate investing portfolio, it really wasn't for what our family needed. We really needed to replace our job income so we could spend more time with our kids, so we could travel when we wanted to, leave our jobs, and replace that job income. So I needed a predictable way of creating cash flow so that I don't have to worry about vacancies, I don't have to worry about appliances breaking down, I don't have to worry about tenants maybe not paying on time. So all of these things really brought rent-to-own to the forefront.
Yeah. There's the other side of the coin on this rent-to-own, because there's the investor aspect, but you are helping people. And so talk a little bit about how you're helping people get into home ownership.
Well, ultimately, it becomes an investment opportunity with a purpose. The purpose is not only to replace my job income and to avoid the tenant and toilet hazard, but also to help home buyers. There's a lot of people who are struggling to get into home ownership. They've been saving, they have that 5%, but their credit isn't perfect. And when they go to the bank turns them away and says, you got to continue renting. Well, rents are really high, and they're stuck kind of between a rock and a hard place. Rent-to-own gives them a different choice. Rent-to-own allows them to take that 5% and lock in future equity in a property and treat the property as their own, and optically to the world, they're basically homeowners.
And so Rachel Oliver, known as the queen of rent-to-owns, and Mrs. O, how did you get Mr. No, as you've often referred to your husband as? How did you get him? Because you guys are now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're putting together the investor and the tenant who wants home ownership. You're kind of brokering that. You take care of everything, and you're doing that now full time. I mean, you and your husband left corporate jobs to be able to do this. How did you convince him to do it? I mean, you started first, and then he left his job and joined you. Is that the case? Or?
Actually, no. I kind of pushed him into it first.
Okay.
Because he's more of a numbers guy, and he really needed to see how this worked in order to justify that this is something that could be sustainable and actually replace 2 job incomes in the long run. So I continued working, and I kind of pushed him into the deep end and said, run with it. And he struggled a little bit at the beginning because we weren't systemized. We were still, there's a bit of a learning curve. But ultimately, what got him on board was the helping side of it. He actually saw that he was making such a positive difference in the lives of these home buyers that, when he would go to a home inspection, they would be hugging him. They'd have tears in their eyes. They would be so grateful. And he said, wow, this is where I want to be. And of course, the numbers don't lie. He's a numbers guy, so the numbers got him on board as well.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, you touched on something. Isn't it amazing that you can have a for-profit purpose in the business world?
Absolutely.
I love that, right? Benevolence doesn't mean it has to be non-for-profit.
Exactly.
Right? Everybody can win. Everybody can win. The tenant homeowner could win. The investor wins. The Olivers win, and I think it's a wonderful thing. So, generally speaking, from an investor's point of view, what is the return on investment with something like this? So, I'm going to ask you, what's the return? When do we exit it? How does that kind of work?
So the average rent-to-own term is about 36 months. We do some deals at 24 months. We do some deals at 48 months. But on average, we're about 36 months in. And the return on investment per year can be anywhere from 25% to about 29%. That's kind of the going rate.
Say that again?
Between 25% and 29% per year.
For the investor?
For the investor.
For RAV?
For RAV, fully managed, fully turnkey deal. There's nothing you need to do other than pay your taxes on that money.
And, generally speaking, I guess, so what money is involved? Is it 20% of the purchase price plus closing costs? Is that all it is?
Basically, but the benefit in a rent-to-own is that you're not dealing with the first and last month's rent component. You have a home buyer who has been saving up. They have 5% down, so their 5% down payment goes into the pocket of RAV, for example.
Oh, is that right?
So instead of coming in with or tying up 20% down payment on a property, you've now tied up only 15%. So other people's money gives you more leverage, which means your ROI goes up substantially as a result.
I like your style, sister. I like your style. So I'm doing 15% plus closing costs, 3-year term. You're watching over this investment on your investors' RAV's behalf. And so title is in the tenant purchaser, homeowners, to-be homeowner's name, or title is in RAV's name?
Title is in RAV's name.
Okay.
So for the first 3 years, you're on title. It is your property. It is your asset. The tenant buyer, as we call them, have a contract in place, which means that there's a predetermined date and a predetermined future purchase price at which they were going to be buying that property from RAV. So essentially, in that 36-month term, these people are making a monthly payment that helps them purchase this property down the road. So they've given a lump sum at the beginning of 5%, plus every month a portion of their payment is building up to that 5%. So at the end, they'll have 8, 9, 10% of the future purchase price. So now they're very desirable to the banks, and they've done what they need to do to improve their credit, because behind the scenes, what we are doing, what essentially Neil is doing behind the scenes, is nurturing them and guiding them on what they need to do to become more mortgage ready.
That's fantastic. So tenant buyer, in spirit, it's their house. They're taking care of everything. Legally, it's RAV's assets. Again, the Olivers Clover Properties is looking over this and managing this. Okay, so we always want to talk about risk. If for whatever reason they don't become a buyer of this property, then would it just convert into RAV having a rental property with a tenant? Is that how it works, or how does it? What happens if they don't buy?
So there's multiple exit strategies. Now remember, in a rent-to-own, you have the security of the down payment. That down payment that the tenant buyer came in with, and anything that they've paid into it every month, becomes quite a big pot of money. It could be $30,000, $35,000, $40,000 at the end of the rent-to-own process. That is RAV security because it's not refundable if the tenant buyer decides not to exercise the option to buy.
So the $400,000 property, the 5% that they put down $20,000, plus they paid above and beyond, what's the word we call that?
Well, we call it a down payment credit.
Credit. So they paid credit monthly on top of the expenses, and that will go towards them to buy. But if they don't, then I keep the 5% plus the credits, and then the property.
You have mortgage pay down.
Yes.
You've had a well-maintained property.
Yes.
And ultimately, you get further ahead.
Yes.
However, there are multiple exit strategies that you would want to consider. So one is to re-rent to own it.
Yes.
To get another injection of another 5% down payment, another family who would be a suitable candidate. That's one option. The other option is to add it to your buy, rent, hold portfolio and just make it a standard rental property. And you're not in for as much capital because obviously you've had some money already injected into the property. You could also spiff it up and sell it. So boost the appreciation a little bit and sell it over asking. Some investors have been successful in doing
options. We're going to talk about a specific case study when we come back from the break, but obviously, I don't want them to not buy it. I want them to buy it because that was their intent and their heart to do that. And we'll talk about the success rate because I know Clover Properties' success rate is astronomically high. We're talking to my good friend Rachel. We're learning how to make money in rent-to-owns for cash flow. Don't go anywhere. Everyday Investor continues in a moment.
Everyday Investor is brought to you by ProFunds Mortgages, fixed returns, real security. Sam McDaddy Real Estate, full service brokerage for all your buying, selling, and investing needs.
Hey, it's Rob. Welcome back. Today we're talking about how to make money investing in rent-to-owns for cash flow. Rachel Oliver's on the show. Thanks for being on the show, Rachel.
Happy to be here.
You know, before the break, we were talking about, the success of the tenant becoming a homeowner. And I asked you, what happens if that doesn't happen? You gave us, many options. But the heart of it all is we want this person to become a homeowner. And so what is that success rate?
So when we first got started, we noticed that the industry average success rate was about 50-50. So 50% of the homeowners that were entering rent-to-own programs with other people, other investors, were, only half of them were really successfully exiting into ownership. And this is where Mr. No kind of was able to re-engineer the process and change up how rent-to-owns are done and make them more home buyer centric. Yeah. Because if the numbers are home buyer centric, then it cements the investor's security in the deal as well. And ultimately, what Neil did translated into a 90% success rate with the Clover Properties model.
Well, one of the things I heard you say that he does is he helps them through the process because, I've always wondered, what's lacking? Is it the credit that's lacking or is it the funds that are lacking, right? Somebody can have the funds but not have great credit, and I think that's where Neil comes in to help them get great credit so now that they can qualify. I always thought it was, people have great credit, but it's really hard to save money. So where are they coming up with that 5% plus the extra credits? But you're saying you find, no, people have money usually, but because they didn't, bring back the video that they rented on time, they now can't qualify. That was a little joke, by the way. I know you're laughing. They can't now qualify for a mortgage. So is that the case, is that you find that people do have the 5%, but the credit's not good?
That's right. So with 5% and perfect credit, you can get a mortgage the conventional way. And we always encourage people to go that route if they can. But most people are focused on building up their down payment and trying to keep pace with the rising values of the market. What they tend to neglect is looking at what's under the hood on that credit report. And oftentimes there's blemishes like you're pointing out. A $50 bill that they were arguing with their phone company and they felt that they were right and they're not going to pay it. Well, that dings their credit over the years. Sometimes it's more severe. Sometimes it's collection items associated with a failed marriage. Sometimes it's not having enough job history because they're newer to the country. There's a lot of different reasons why someone's credit wouldn't be perfect in the bank's eyes. So rent-to-own gives them the time that they need and the runway in order to fix those little credit issues in order to become mortgage ready. But at the same time, they are building up a bigger down payment because their 5% today might not work 3 years from now.
I asked you, what do you think we should call this show? You said investing in rent to own. I said, great. He said, no. Investing in rent to own for cash flow.
That's right.
And so help me understand that, especially in a metropolis. If we're in Vancouver, if we're in Toronto, where we are, you know, the GTA, you're saying we can make cash flow in the GTA?
Absolutely.
Teach me.
The traditional way, obviously, doing a rental might be a little bit trickier. Rent to own, you're getting into a move-in ready property. There's no need for renovations. There's no need for extra expenses and time. You can find a move-in ready property in today's market, and you can cash flow. In this particular example, it's a Mississauga townhouse, and the cash flow is $811 a month.
A month?
A month.
Not a year?
A month.
$10,000 roughly a year cash flow.
Correct.
In Mississauga?
In Mississauga.
Okay, so let's go through some numbers here. Teach me how we're doing this.
Okay, so in a rent to own, you are making money kind of in two places. You're making money through your monthly cash flow.
Yeah.
And you're making money from the future sale, which is kind of a capital gain at the end.
Okay.
So if you factor in $811 a month in cash flow,
Yeah.
that's about $9,700 a year, and adds up to about over 36 months, $29,196. That's your profit from the cash flow component.
Just the cash flow component.
Just the cash flow component. Remember, fully managed turnkey deal. So there's nothing else that you need to consider doing. No maintenance, no repairs. Tenant buyers are looking after that because they have homeowner mentality. The other portion comes from the future sale.
Okay.
So the tenant buyers are not going to be buying the property for the price that we bought it for today. So we bought it today, for example, for $393,000.
Okay.
And we have a contract in place that we're selling this property to them 3 years from now for $458,285,000.
Okay, so so we determined that up front what the exit value is going to be, and you took probably a conservative 3, 4, 5% or whatever the case is, and that's what gives us that.
Exactly. We usually appreciate properties anywhere from 4.5% to 5.5%. In this case, it's about 5% annual appreciation, which is fair. If you consider kind of Ontario's averages,
yes.
It's probably closer to about 7%.
Well, we're talking about Mississauga, you said.
And this is Mississauga, and
Yes.
that's probably above Ontario average.
Yeah, and so if the market went down, this is still the price. If the market goes up, this is still the price. We've determined that up front.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And the reason that we want to set a future appreciation price at a very conservative rate is to account for market adjustments. The key with rent to owns is that we're playing in an entry-level price point. So home buyers that are basically first-time home buyers are shopping in the $350 to $550 price point. And that's where we do a lot of our rent to owns. And when, you know, affordability becomes an issue, people that are shopping above the $550,000 price point, they're dropping down to our area, and people that are coming into the market are entering the market. So we're constantly seeing demand in the price point that we're
It's a great strategy, yes.
So,
So people can get in.
That's right,
you know?
and it shields us a little bit from that market volatility and the risks that higher priced properties tend to see of market fluctuations.
And it's because it's turnkey ready for the investor. It's not a large outlay, right? I mean, I put in the 15% plus some closing costs, but it's within that 400-ish, give or take, you know, kind of market. So I like it for the investor, right?
Absolutely. So in this scenario, for example, after you factor in, you know, mortgage pay down and closing costs at the end, and the fact that you have to credit a down payment component to the tenant buyer, your capital gain is about $38,113. So when you factor in your capital gain, the $38,000 plus the cash flow profit, $29,000, if you combine the two, you're profiting essentially $67,309, and you're
over the 3 years.
Over the 3 years,
yes,
and you were in for $77,525.
Okay.
Because you originally got a $20,000 down payment from those tenant buyers.
I put the 15%. I have my closing costs, but then they gave me theirs, the $20,000, so I deduct that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now you have to credit it at the end off of the future purchase price, but we account that in calculating our capital gain and calculating the overall ROI. So if you're in for $77,525 and you're pulling out $67,309 in profit, your annual ROI is 29% in this case.
Annualized.
Annualized.
Yes.
And your cash flow for 3 years straight is $811.
Basically, you know, I'm going to Turks and Caicos every year with this $10,000, and then at the end of it all, when you add it all up, I'm making almost 30% annualized return with no work.
And you can comfortably be an absentee landlord in this scenario because Clover Properties is doing all the heavy lifting behind the scenes to manage the relationship with those home buyers to make sure that they're doing what they need to do
Yeah.
to comply with the contracts and pay on time.
Do we have more tenant buyers or do we have more investors?
I would say it's harder to find the tenant buyers because not everyone who has blemished credit and 5% down is a good fit for rent to own.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking for emotional commitment. We're looking for financial commitment. There's a lot of things that we do to screen the right fit.
Yes.
So it is a bit of a needle in a haystack to find the right fit.
Emotional commitment to the home, not RAV.
No,
Yes.
to the process.
To the process.
To the process.
Yes,
Rent
yes.
to own is a commitment.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that they're able to do what it's going to take for them to succeed.
Yeah.
So we're looking for that emotional commitment out of the gate.
And, I know you know many different strategies. Do you niche right in onto this, the rent to own? Is this your
This is our
niche?
niche. This
your
is all we do. This is all we focus on. And we service investors from not just Ontario. You were saying it's hard to find cash flowing properties in BC and even Alberta. So we have a lot of investors that actually invest in rent-to-own properties through Clover Properties from all of those other provinces, and they're benefiting from the cash flow that they otherwise wouldn't have in their market.
Well, I mean, the reason why I wanted you so desperately on the show, and we got to wrap up here in just a minute, is you shared about one of your friends who's, a client, and he did 6, 7, 5 in 1 year. How many did he do?
7 rent-to-owns in 1 year.
7 rent-to-owns in 1 year. What's the cash flow on that?
So the cash flow is $5,000 when you take those 7 properties in total. Some of them cash flow $625, some of them cash flow $900. So when you average it out, it's about $5,000 a month in cash flow.
$60,000 a year.
Correct.
In 1 year he's created.
And the reason he wanted to do that, remember, there's got to be a why, there's got to be a reason, there's got to be a purpose. His wife wanted to leave her job to spend more time with their young boys.
Yes.
And he's a frugal guy, so he didn't want to have zero coming in from her side. So he wanted to optimize their equity and put it to work so that he used a portion of basically their household equity and invested it into all these properties.
Smart guy, happy wife, happy life. Rachel, thank you so much for being on the show. Can't wait to have you back to talk even more about this concept of rent to own.
Love to be back.
And thank you for tuning in. Without you, we wouldn't have a show. For more information on this show or any others, or to become an Everyday Investor Insider, where you can get investment opportunities, tips, advice, go to everydayinvestor.com and sign up. Until next week, we'll see you same place, same time. Honey, I love you. I'll be home soon.